My name is Monk Rowe for the Phileas Jazz Archive, and I'm very pleased to have Vince DiMartino with me today. And we're pretending you're in Greece. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, my mind is there a lot of times every day.
Yeah. Well, you're a world traveler, and you can't see this because it's in front of me, but in the wall in front of me, I have 6 pages of your resume.
Oh no.
On the right, I have a page of handwritten notes, and on the left, another page. And then I have these pages that I don't have room for. So my
All
first
right.
my first question is, how did you fit all this in?
Well, first of all, I'm a teacher first. I've always wanted to be just like my high school band director. So I always made sure that I taught all my students every week and never missed any because that was my primary goal is to be an asset to that community. No matter where I was teaching, it didn't really matter if I was teaching junior high school students, I would be the same. And then on the weekends, and I would teach until Thursday afternoon, and then I could get on a plane and I could fly to another university or some concert venue, to play with some other folks, brass quintet, jazz groups, solo with wind ensembles and stuff like that. And then I would come back on Sunday night.
I think I know the answer to this question, but do you feel it was a positive arrangement for you to be doing these concerts and these gigs? And how did it affect your teaching and what you could pass on
Oh,
to your students?
oh yeah. Well, it depended on what students. I taught mostly music ed students and applied students, some of which are pretty well known performers now, but they had needs, and so I had to make sure that the syllabus that I used a very strict syllabus, whereas most applied teachers don't do that. That you come into the lesson and everybody go, oh, that sounds better than last week. But if you're taking English class, they give you a syllabus and there's 5 books on there, and you read those 5 books, and you are responsible for the material, and then you get tested on it.
Did you create the syllabus?
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
And did you create it? I'm going back to
Mhm.
this performing that you did in all aspects of music. Did that find a place in the syllabus?
Yes, in a sense. Uh, First of all, our responsibility of a trumpet teacher, if you're going to study with a trumpet teacher, you have to learn how to play the trumpet. And a lot of students come to college and they have deficiencies. So the first 2 semesters of my syllabus are more or less expository. So everything is set up by keys and by like styles of music. Like I had one book that was called In the Singing Style, and what it was part orchestra melodies, everything from a church hymn to a you know some kind of a part of some piece that a trumpet would play in an orchestra or something like that. So this way I could see assess the depth of the knowledge of students in music. Then I would have technical. We would start out with freshmen. Everybody. It didn't matter if they were virtuosic. All freshmen did the same course because you know what the academic ombudsman is, don't you?
I'm going to let you tell me.
Well, in most liberal arts colleges, they usually don't have one, but I taught in Centered, so I know that they don't really have one. They have an academic council or something. But at state universities, it's you have to treat everybody equally, and meaning from a standpoint of the coursework. You can't say, "Oh, well, Monk, you're not a very good reader, so I'm going to give you this real easy thing to do." And then at the end of the semester, you can write a 1-page summary of what we did this semester, and that's all you need to do because you're not as proficient as this other person. Then this other young person comes in, maybe the class is philosophy. And well, your mom and dad were both philosophers and they wrote books and things. So you have to read War and Peace, and you have to tell me all the levels that this book is written on. And then the guy that does the War and Peace gets a B, and the guy that does the easy assignment because they just had no contact with music gets an A. You see, that's not fair, because it's like students when I used to practice, when I first went to Eastman, I didn't want to sound bad in a practice room. All I ever played with things that I felt like I could, I tried to get those things better, and I knew I couldn't play below the staff worth a darn. So I didn't really do that too much because, so that's what you try to learn by setting up a syllabus, because it's very expository. It shows what the student can't do. So even though they're using the same syllabus later, when I developed it a few years down the road, when I had my first sabbatical, that was the very first thing I did. I said, because I was sort of doing it, but it was still kind of a little on the hodgepodge side, I had music ed students, and so I had to figure out a way to use the same syllabus for music ed students. Like I say, well, we're going to transpose. Well, I don't need to transpose. I said, okay, here's this score. Tell me what note the French horn's playing in concert pitch. Oh, let's see. I'm going.
Time's up.
That's right. I said, the kids are way smarter than we are. I said, if you can't read the score, they know it. Because they know what their instruments can do, and you don't. Count lines, stuff. I said, you can't do that. You want to be an extraordinary band director. That means, it doesn't mean you're a genius. It means you're out of the ordinary. There are no geniuses. There are extraordinary people,
Okay, that's quote number one today. I love it.
So eventually I developed this syllabus. And the syllabus was to put everybody in the same course so that they had the same materials that they had to know as a graduating trumpet player or band director or band director. Mm-hmm. See what I mean? So that this way. And now, that said, the materials that you had to be tested on, and it's in 2-week modules. So the first week they come in and I say, well, how'd you do on the materials this week? Because that's the first week. See, so notice you have 2-week modules, the same material. That's the only time you get to do that material. Then you get tested on it the second week. But if they're a student, okay, that is, fairly advanced, they took private lessons, they're gonna sail through the first stuff, except for maybe the things that they don't do so well, like, your articulation is really not that good. You can play faster than lightning, but it's not really clear what you're doing. So you can use them, especially if you use material that is very familiar to the teacher.
I'm going to leapfrog to after you've had these students for years, perhaps.
Yeah, 4 years.
Okay. Have you ever had students who get to the point who can play things that you can't? And
not really.
No, okay.
Not really. And that's because, I don't expect all my colleagues to do what I've done, which is my own passion for playing. I practice. People would say to me, why are you in Kentucky? I'd say, well, why are you anywhere? I said, because you can be an asset to that community. When I stepped foot in Kentucky and started that, it was a 1-year appointment. And I knew after the first month that I didn't want to leave. Because there was activity in the trumpet there, but it was not anything extraordinary. And so now I think the thing I feel the best about, besides the students that are teaching at other universities and playing in service bands and, professional groups and things of orchestras, I think my greatest achievement is having enriched the community in which I live. That what could be better?
I've, as a kid, I had a couple of moments that really put me on a path, which was fortunate. And I read this anecdote about you had a semester away and you were in Bogota, Colombia.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you, I'd love to hear the details about this.
Well, it's a good story because it really relates to my life choices, and that is when I was in high school. I was a good student, and so that's how I got to go to Bogota. The school sent me for free. So and they sent another girl who was one of my good friends to. She went to Guatemala, and I was sent to Colombia. So it was kind of neat. So when after I'd been there, a month, man, I wasn't playing with anybody. I wasn't doing anything. So there was a dance at this big hotel, the Hotel Tequendama, and it was at the time it was like the hotel. So if your school had a dance, they did it there because it was their big deal. Mm-hmm. And so I went and they had this cumbia band that played that music, and I said, "Wow, that's really interesting stuff." I heard that on the radio, and I said, "Now I'm watching the musicians do this." And I told them, I said, "Well, I play trumpet, and so they said, "Well, you can come back." I said, "Well, yeah, I play I played in the like all state groups and stuff like that in America." He said, "Well, you can come back if you want to try to play with us." So I did. I went back the next week, and I played with them, and they said, "Oh, you sound great." So when I went back, I talked to my mom first. I said, "Mom, I don't think I want to be a doctor." And she said, "Oh, that's all right." I said, "Really?" She said, "Well, look at you're a really good student. Look at what you've done on trumpet. Look what you've done in school. Why would I be worried about what you're going to do? You're going to do well." And she was great. I said, "Well, thanks for that, Mom. You can tell Dad." It was really funny. I mean, and my mom was really the center of our whole family, even the grandparents and everything, because she had the joie de vivre. And when she said, "Oh, come on, we have to get together on Sunday. Come on out from the city," my grandparents.
What was that descriptor you just used for her?
Joie de vivre?
Yeah.
Joy for life.
Okay. You must have not been a person who was afraid to take a chance to basically improvise.
But I didn't learn by reading music. Because even though I started in the public schools, that was sort of, fundamentally, da, 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 da. And my neighbor was a bass player, my back neighbor. And I would climb over the fence, and he had a little jazz group that he would rehearse. He was like an engineer at Sperry Gyroscope out on Long Island. He played bass, genius. He was telling me about how they were working on the gyroscopes that send the rockets up and stuff. I mean, he was great. But my dad said to him, my dad was a tap dancer during the war overseas. I mean, he did everything from being a cook to a tank driver, and he would entertain tap dancing when they were doing some sort of event to keep everybody upbeat, And so, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So he asked the bass player who in the back, he said, "Hey, Bob, my son's been playing trumpet and I think he sounds pretty good. So is there any recordings that I should have? I should get him." And we didn't have a lot of money. So he named like 4 recordings, and it was Miles Davis, Maynard Ferguson, Rafael Mendez, and Billy Butterfield.
Oh, nice mix.
Yep. That's why I think this guy was, like I say, he was really organized in his thoughts and his work. So I had these 4 records, the LPs and a changer. And every day after school, that's what I did. I practiced. I did my homework first, always, my schoolwork. And so then I did my trumpet until dinner. I did my homework while my mom was cooking. I did it in the kitchen, the table. And she was cooking. I said, "Oh, what is that, Mom? That smells really good." And that's how I learned to cook. I never cooked for many years, but except by smell. When I finally started to cook a lot, I just remembered what it smelled like. I said, "I think this is close." That's about, and then I said, "Well, I think that was too much garlic, maybe." So, I would practice with these records at least an hour a day, at least.
Can you define how were you practicing? Were you copying?
Yes.
Yes, you were trying to get what these trumpet players were playing.
Yes, and I thought that I was like the worst trumpet player that ever lived because I couldn't play a lot of the stuff that was on the records. Try to play along with Maynard Ferguson. I'm going, "Gee, they don't even have the fingerings in the book for this. So how am I supposed to do this?" So I said, "Well, I'll just use the ones an octave lower," and then it worked, and and I played in band, in middle school band, and I remember when I was in middle school band that we were reading like a simple march book, one of the Bennett band book. I remember it was a little, one of these things.
Yeah.
And they had like easy versions of marches. And they'd start playing and I couldn't, I say, "What? How come there's 3/8 notes in a beat? I don't get this." Because it was 6/8. You see, and I didn't understand how 6/8 worked. And I could play it because once I heard somebody play it, I figured it out, but I really was, I always practiced. When I was in junior high school, I practiced at least a couple hours a day, at least. And I listened. See, and I always tell people today, no matter what lessons they're taking, I say, practicing is a good thing. I said, if you only like to practice a half hour a day and you just want to learn to play a little bit and play in a group, then you only have to listen a half hour a day. I said, if you want to practice more than that, then you have to practice the equivalent time listening. Otherwise, you have no vocabulary. All you have is words. You have just words and they don't make any sense to anybody. So, and the inflection, I said, you have to learn the vernacular language of whatever's on the recording.
Sort of anticipated a question I had about that. And that was especially in the rock and roll or the jazz, as you were playing the trumpet parts or playing along with it, was there a point where you got a sense of also hearing the bass notes and figuring out, okay, this is mostly in this key?
Yeah.
That's why these trumpet parts sort of make sense.
Yeah. When my first job was when I was 14, okay, with other older musicians, because I lived about 400 yards from an American Legion Hall. No, it wasn't American Legion Hall. It was like one of those, like a little party house, not a big one, just a little one. And they would have weddings in there, and the Italian club would meet there, and other things like that. So one night about 9:00, the phone rings, and it's some guy talking to my dad. And he goes, "Absolutely not." I'm going, "What's going on? I don't know what's going on." He says, "No, my son's not coming out at 9:00 and play with your band. I know you heard he plays pretty well, but well, okay, I'm coming over there with him." So he took me over to this place, and and my neighbor had given me a fake book. See, I did that after school too. I learned some tunes. I didn't really know the chord changes at all, really. So the very first thing I heard from the band leader, "Oh, thanks for coming. Perdido in B flat." That was all I had.
Did you have a B flat fake book?
No, I had a C.
So you had a concert fake book. Did you?
Yeah, I understood. I transposed it.
You did.
That I had to play up a step. And my band director, of course, in high school. Okay. he was great. Like I
We
said,
should get his name on the record.
his name,
Yeah.
Edward Giulio.
Elio?
Giulio, D, large D, small E,
Okay.
large I, L-I-O. U-I-L-O. Giulio.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I think of him almost every day still because he was just remarkable, a remarkable person, you know. And he taught, he would say, yeah, I'd be always, anytime I had time, I was in the band room practicing. You know, it's just, during lunch, I would eat lunch in 10 minutes and I'd go over to the band room and practice. And that's just what I did. And he had one of those rotating lesson schedules so that he could have the groups of kids that played the same part. He could work with them and teach them, you know, give a little more instruction than just playing in band and not getting the part. You know what I mean? So he had a rotating schedule. And so if I came down there and there was a group in there, he'd go, oh, go teach the saxophones, go teach the alto saxophones. And I'd say, I can't teach them. Their music is in a different key. Well, you'll get it. Don't worry about it. That's only instruction. And then, you know, like the next guy, you know, Glenn Drews is?
Yes.
Okay. He sat right here in high school band. We were together, you know, and we were pretty good, you know. And then the third guy, he could barely, you know, play a G on top of the staff. He was one of the first trumpets too. And then the guy that was the fourth one was better that you didn't hear him, you know. But he understood why every person was in band. That was his forte. Besides playing trumpet, he played trumpet. I didn't take lessons from him because, you know, he would have probably given me lessons, but we didn't really have any money. We were poor, you know, and I didn't want to, I had a paper route. I bought records with that money. That's what I did. Every day when we finished, when I collected the money for the papers, I knew how much I had to pay for the papers, and I knew how much was left. And I go directly to Abraham and Straus. Abraham and Straus was a department store in Long Island. I don't know, probably other places, but they had a record department. Unheard of today. But I would go there and I'd look through the instrumental section.
Me too.
And I'd find, oh, look, there's a new Harry James record. I got to have this. And then, so that the record collection kept. And when I gave away my records, except for the ones that are sort of collectors things for me, I had over 800 of those. I have I don't know how many, way over 1,000 CDs. And now with all the digital stuff, I don't even know what I have. I have 15,000 pieces of music that are cataloged.
Okay, take me back to Perdido because I'm curious as after you played the melody, did the band leader say, okay, you got it?
And he said, can you play a solo? And I said, well, if somebody else plays first, because the wheels were turning for me already, you know, and I don't know why, but I said, well, I'm going to figure out. So I heard it. I said, oh yeah, I can play that. That's in C, the beginning of it, you know? Oh yeah, well, this middle section's got some different chords in it, but it's got some E's in it. So, you know, see what I mean? So I was playing like, you know, the outline, you know, but it was great. And I played with that band for years. I played with these musicians and they would play with different groups. And I imagine they must have said, well, look at this young guy. He can play pretty well. And he knows the songs. See, so I could play the melody even if it wasn't, because every day I'd learn a couple of tunes. I'd, you know, transpose them because I said, if I get called to do something now, I got to know the tunes.
So just so we have this story complete, do you recall what you were paid for that first?
Oh yeah, it was about $18.
Okay.
18. It was under $20. I remember that.
I bet it was more than
but I felt like a millionaire.
Say that again.
I felt like a millionaire because my friends were working in McDonald's for $1.25 an hour. They were working all week, and I made more money than they did just playing for 2-3 hours. four, sometimes four. But, I did sometimes two things on a weekend. And so I could buy my little sister, she's 14 years younger than me. I could buy stuff for her. I'd go to the fish store and get some good fish for my mom. I love fish and I love fish. My dad never wasn't a big fish person. And even when I came home from college, I never went home first. I went to the fish store. And when I pulled in the driveway, the first thing I did was take the fish in. You know what I mean?
I don't know. That sounds fishy to me.
It is. And it was sort of it was great because I felt like that was a good function and I bought some records occasionally, and stuff like that. But mostly I used it to feel like I was helping with the family stuff, and I think that's a good, and I tell students this all the time. I say, look, the most important thing is to be an asset to your community. I said, it doesn't matter if you're on Carnegie Hall stage, that's a community. Make sure you're doing what is necessary to be an asset to that group. If you're playing with a junior high school or conducting a junior high school band, make sure you're an asset to that community. If somebody dies in your community and you can play at the service, and that person especially, you can volunteer to play. I still do it. Like, because when they finish that service, invariably, people will come up to me and say, oh my gosh, when you played the Ave Maria, it really helped the whole where I was. And you go, what could be better than that? That's real.
You make me think about when I look at your resume and your list of accomplishments and things you've done, I wonder if there's a difference in your mindset, your preparation, and your whole demeanor from playing. I know a mutual friend mentioned that you had played A Soldier's Tale, Stravinsky, and
I didn't do it with Stravinsky. I played Stravinsky, Soldier's Tale.
Right.
There's a recording with Syracuse chamber music players that we did. Yeah.
So when that's coming up for you, even the day of it, is it a different Vince than if you're playing that with the Clark Terry Big Band? Is your
no, the person's the character's wearing a different costume. I'm acting. Playing music is acting because you're in a scenario, you're in a landscape. See, the landscape, if you see like a Monet painting, right? And it's, beautiful and everything. And all of a sudden there's a picture of a bicycle in the middle of it. That isn't going to make it unless it's just for shock. You know what I mean? It's to shock somebody or something. But in general, some people like that kind of art. You know what I mean? But my job is not to do that. My job is to honor the composer. Jazz, classical. If I'm backing up Billy Joel or somebody, one of my friends who lives in Florida, that's what his job is, Billy Joel. And, I played with rock and roll groups, Bobby Rydell. It's only the Joker. And those people call me Sonny and Cher. When you play with these groups, you're never playing Vince DiMartino. I hope not. You're playing their music the way it should be played. That's all. And that's what I like. So that's another reason I taught trumpet, because I tell people, I said, okay, they say, well, I really don't like such and such and this and that. I said, okay. I said, tell me what kind of music you're going to be playing in 20 years. They go, well, I don't know. That's why you have to learn trumpet. Unless you don't want to play trumpet anymore in 20 years.
Did you ever have the experience, especially when you started out playing, contract things to play behind a performer? This happened to me when Aretha Franklin came here.
I played with her too.
Yeah. And I got to play in the horn section. And I found that I can't look at her Because if I do, I'm going to get enthralled and I'm going to miss like 8 measures.
Yeah, there's a certain, well, you develop a work ethic, so to speak. Maybe it's probably a work ethic, or it's probably a better word for it than that. But it would be like when you do certain things. When I play brass quintet, there's nothing I'm thinking about except where I'm going. And that's why the concentration factor in brass quintet playing is very challenging. It's harder than playing recitals with just a piano and trumpet. Maybe not, and physically, just as much, almost the same. Okay, because you never rest much. If you're playing first trumpet, you just play all the time, and you play in the high part, So you're so so that concentration. So when you play like a show like Aretha Franklin, there's a lot of places you don't play. So that's when I listen to Aretha Franklin. But the most important thing, and that's another reason why I used books, that I could teach them this to the band directors and to the people who are going to be professional trumpet players. See, because it's the same. You're teaching music. They have to be musically strong. And then you don't have to have a band director that plays the trumpet to learn to play the trumpet right. I mean, and he taught the flute players, my band director. He taught the saxophone players. They all were good musicians. Yes. We had about 50 people in our band usually because it was a small school. West Babylon was a tiny little part of Babylon, but it was a little own separate school district. And we only had 50 people in the band. Our marching band was in the smallest category and stuff. And about every year, about 10% of that band went into music. And he could, like the thing with Glenn Drews and me, okay? If either of us, the band director would conduct here and the trumpets were sitting over here, right next to him, he'd be conducting away, and band was sounding just as average as it always did. And then he'd look at us, never stop the band. And I said, Glenn, I think we did something wrong. Because that's all he would do. He'd never call us out in band. But, people couldn't play the part. He never said anything to them because he knew why they were in band. So it became a really inclusive band. We were all close, the ones that played well, the ones that didn't. So and then I go home, I say, Mom, he looked at me today. She knew what that meant. You know what I'm saying? Because he knew that I was going to take that music home and I was going to dissect the section he looked at us at. And I was going to try to find see, that was the part. See, I didn't know what he was looking for. Oh. So I was looking. He didn't say, well, you missed that lick there, No, he didn't tell me what was. I didn't know if it was an articulation. Maybe I was missing an accidental or something. Usually not, because I play by ear mostly. I just knew what fit in and what didn't. But, or some rhythm wasn't exactly right. And I come back the next day and I go, okay, I want to see if he's going to look at me again in that spot. I mean, it was like a game for him. He knew he had everybody's number.
Sometimes this is hard to remember, but in your lengthy career,
mm-hmm.
Can you recall, I'm going to use a couple adjectives here.
Yeah.
The most bizarre gig, the worst gig, the kind of gig you come home and tell your wife, you go, you can't believe what happened on this one.
Most of them some of them are funny, like one of them, it was the most depressing job for me personally. Okay. I get called. Once again, somebody was sick. It was in Rochester when I was a student. Somebody is sick, and this guy calls up and says, can you come and play over at the 50 Acres, which was a big barn-like place, you know what I mean? And they had weddings and different kinds of things, just like the first job I ever played. And so I showed up, and the guy that was running the job, he was about 85, and he played violin. And I noticed that Joe Benedetto, he was the vice president of the Musicians Union, was playing. I said, "Oh, I know Joe. At least I know Joe," because I didn't, And everybody in that group was, except for Joe, he was about 55 at the time, was over 70. Everybody. So, and there was no book. There was no book. Okay. So the guy says, "Well, thanks for coming. Do you know the Black Hawk Waltz?" I said, "No." I knew a lot of tunes. And this went on. I think I knew one tune in the first set. And, now, and the guy, he felt bad because he knew that all the tunes were really old, and the ones that I did know, I could really play. And then, of course, I could play solos when he wanted me to play a solo, but I couldn't play the melody ever. I'd say, I'd listen. And then I sort of, sometimes I could play like a part of the melody because I figured it out while they were playing it just like I did the first job. I used the same technique. And then Joe Benedetto, the guy, he was sitting right next to me, the saxophone player. He says, he knew what was going on. I said, and he said to me, "Vince, I have only known 2 or 3 tunes, and I'm 55. And so he knew, because I was like 19 or something like that, and it was great, but it was depressing because I couldn't really contribute anything. You know what I mean? I just was sitting there, and matter of fact, I think I told the guy, I said, "Look, I didn't do very good tonight." He says, "You don't really have to pay me. I really played only about 5 tunes that I knew, and I played some solos, and that's all I did." He says, "Oh no, you sounded very nice." And that was it. And I said, "Okay, whatever." I said, "I could use the money." But, that was a terribly depressing job. Another one that was with my dad. See, my dad was a tap dancer, and he was in the American Legion. Like I said, I played pretty well when I was 14. Like I could play, like if I could play like Bunny Berg, and I could play, I Can't Get Started. I could play Hey There, down an octave from where Maynard Ferguson played it. And you know what I mean? I could play all these characters acting, And so they had a little group that would go out to the veterans homes, the mental hospitals and stuff, all the different kinds of things that for veterans mostly, you know what I mean, where they might be. And so we would go out, and we went to this one hospital, which is infamous actually. And it got closed up. Pilgrim State Hospital out on Long Island. There was a big expose maybe 40, 50 years ago on the Pilgrim State, how horrible the conditions were and everything. So we're in this place, right? And we start playing. And when I played, people were starting to like scream and stuff, I didn't know where I was. And it was horrifying. I was going, geez, I'm hurting these people. I think I don't know what's going on, because they were reacting to the music. They liked it because they told me later, they said, no. The people that ran the place, they said, "No, we haven't had this much excitement out of the people, but for me on the stage, it was, horrifying because I thought I was like hurting people. Because trumpet's not the softest instrument. I thought I was, because sometimes, the band director would tell you to play softer, So that was it. And one of the most exhilarating times was when I realized that, sometimes I had to play some really hard solos. And I was already teaching at UK, but I played in Cincinnati Pops, and a lot of the recordings I did, and the solos I did with the orchestra. Well, they played them in Carnegie Hall. So I got to play those solos with the Cincinnati Orchestra in Carnegie Hall, which, that's a little more nerve-wracking at first. So the first thing I had to play in Carnegie Hall with the Cincinnati Pops was this thing called Portrait of George. And I didn't record it. The guy that did record it was one of the greatest trumpet players I ever heard in my life. And he lived only in Cincinnati, never left there. And he died young. Somebody shot him in a bar, but this guy was the most amazing player I ever heard. So, I was channeling my Frank Brown, but I said, well, I'm pretty nervous about this. And the first thing that happens in this piece, Portrait of George, it's George Gershwin, 3 tunes, and it featured a trombone, a sax, and a trumpet. They were all the 3 best people in Cincinnati, at the time that recording was done. And of course, he was gone. So the other 2 guys were there and me. And so I'm getting ready to play. And the first thing that happens, the high F, all alone in Carnegie Hall, right? And I had to play it off stage. So I was saying, oh, crap, there is no off stage here in Carnegie Hall. There is none. There's the one stage, but it was on the other side of the stage. On my side, there just was this door. And Eric Kunzel was conducting. And he saw me standing there. He goes, what are you doing? You got to get off stage. I said, well, there isn't any off stage. There's a door over there. Go open the door. I opened the door, and it was the janitor's closet. And in there's this old lectern that, looked like it had been dented 1,000 times from banging into something. And then there was the custodian's mop barrel filled with water and smelly mops. So I go in there and I started laughing. I said, I'm in Carnegie Hall janitor's office. And Kunzel's going, what are you doing in there? Because he wanted me to start playing because, we only had a little dress rehearsal in there. Then we had to play the concert that night. I said, oh, I'm getting ready, Eric. I have to set the music stand. Because I had to bring my music stand in there. There wasn't any music stand. And so that laugh sort of changed my life because I realized, hell, I'm in a janitor's closet. What's the difference between playing in a janitor's closet and on stage? It doesn't make any difference. And so it was an enlightening moment at the right time for me. It was just the right time for it. My grandparents were out there and, and stuff. And my mom and dad, my aunts and uncles, the whole Italian crew was there. So it was fun. I think if your mission is related to people and you care about what they're doing, that's the vibe they get. Because I always wonder, I said, well, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. I thought everybody did that. Because I kept saying that's how clueless I really was and still am sometimes. And the thing with the syllabus too that I wrote and all of that, I said, because of my background, and I tell people this, I said, do you know where Viper, Kentucky is? And they go, no. I said, well, they have a stoplight there. And there's a gas station. And I want a trumpet player who lives in Viper, Kentucky, and has no help to be able to learn to play trumpet by the words that I've written in this book. It has to be written in human language, not some esoteric music, trumpet, guru type of stuff. Otherwise, who understands that? That's not their vernacular. So for me, that was always the most important thing. And so when they came to school, even if, one of my students said something I'll never forget. He was a freshman, okay? And he was playing his jury, his jury exam. Every semester that you take applied lessons, you have to play for the brass faculty. And then they give you comments and they try to help you, and that's great. So, and what I used to do, especially with the freshmen that I knew were nervous playing their first, jury, they were standing up on a stage and people are looking at them. They've never played a recital. They've, never, well, they do, usually they played one because everybody gets on stage once in a big recital that everybody plays on and plays all or part of a movement of a piece. And only with the trumpet players there as their audience. So anyway, they'd been on stage, but in the meantime, they hadn't been in this situation where they're getting graded for it, and stuff. So I get on stage and I said, well, John, what are you going to play? And he goes, I'm going to play that there Haydn song. And I realized where I was, you know what I mean? He never said that because I never asked him that question, and I felt bad because, the faculty, one of them laughed, you know what I mean? And I just, oh gosh, this is awful. I said, this isn't going to happen to anybody. I have to teach people, how to, and I never said Haydn song in lessons, but every time a student mispronounced a word, I said, oh no, man, that's not Haydn. It's Haydn. I said, I used to say Haydn.
Yeah.
But you're going to say Haydn.
I can feel okay about it. Yeah.
How do you know Greg Caputo?
We connected through an arts and education program, and we ended up doing some school concerts with a program that I worked with in Central New York, and we backed up Joe Wilder on a little tour of school.
Gentleman of Jazz, I used to call him.
You, he was one of my favorite people in the whole world.
Everybody. Clark Terry.
Yep.
Clark Terry used to tell me, I'd say, wait, who did you like? He says, well, Joe Wilder, and of course Snooky, and then he mentioned Cadillac Williams, and I said, who's Cadillac Williams? I said, I don't know, Cadillac Williams. I go, he says, well, he said, you should check out Cadillac Williams. He played with Duke Ellington's band. So I bought this 5-volume set of Duke Ellington records. I'm trying to think of the name of the tune. I think it's called Brown Betty. I remember right. It sounds like Clark Terry. I think it was his mentor when he was in the band. Right. I think it was, he was great to me. I mean, I have to tell you, you see that video of the one with where I played the solo right after he did?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the other guy that was in there that played the bridge, that's Richard Williams. He was in the original Thad Jones Mel Lewis band.
That's right. I remember that from the liner notes.
Yes. And when I played with Lionel Hampton when I was, like 19, the band was Jimmy Cleveland, Julian Priester. Jerome Richardson came one time to be in it. It was Lionel Hampton's big band at the Riverboat in the Empire State Building. And I was playing with Lionel Hampton. Paul Cohen, he was the lead trumpet in Count Basie at the time. So when he was in New York and they weren't on tour, he just played gigs around New York. And I mean, it was amazing. The whole thing was amazing, just that I could be in the band, let alone. And then Lionel Hampton, I can tell you a million stories, Lionel Hampton, with Gladys, with his wife.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2. We should do it.
Do it. These stories with Lionel Hampton are unreal. Because I was like this little kid. I was scared of half the people in there because they were kind of rough, and I really wasn't rough. I was naive and just trying to play good. And Wallace Davenport, did you know who he is?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Wallace was on the band, the small group. After I finished the big band job, he asked me to play with his small group, and Wallace was the other trumpet. The guy was unreal. He could circular breathe on double high C's. I go, Wallace. And he was super nice. He studied French all the time on the bus. And I said, why are you studying? Why are you going to France? He says, no. He said, I'm going back to New Orleans. He says, and a lot of the people that I hang out with, they speak French, and I'm going to get much better at it. And then he moved, maybe 6-8 years later, he moved back to New Orleans and stayed there the rest of his life and played in traditional jazz bands. I was lucky because I was the end of an era.
Yes.
The people after me, except, maybe 4 or 5 years after me, were still getting jobs with Woody Herman and, Buddy Rich, and Maynard Ferguson lasted a lot longer.
Yeah.
And but the young people today, they don't get to play. Really, they play with a pop star if they're lucky to get a gig with them, and and they play a few other things. But I mean, we were playing all the time, dinner theaters, all kinds of stuff. So that's why it's important. See, I never played in Lexington very much.
Yeah.
Because if I played, some of the students couldn't go out that were ready to go out.
Oh, what a yes. I never thought of that.
Yeah, and so even the rhythm I never had good rhythm sections. I had to train them. So when I did go out, it was with the students.
Right.
And I'd have a short rehearsal. Okay, we're playing a fashion show. Because I said, well, this is a good gig for them because they're never going to see one of these for a while.
Yes, yes.
I said, now this is what we're going to do. I said, I'm going to have a list of tunes for you. We're going to go over them tonight. We're not going to go over them. I'm going to show you how they go and how we're going to do it and what you need to do and when you need to stop playing each tune and start playing the next one. So, we did that, and they, be little blips here and there.
Yeah.
I did a dance program with one of those with a jazz dance thing. I said, well, we're going to play these tunes. We're going to rehearse we have to rehearse, and you get paid a little money for this. Usually it was the money I was supposed to get,
yeah.
But it was because that's part of their education. And Roland Kirk came to town.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Roland Kirk was a jazz club. It was called the Fishnet. This guy just loved jazz. It only lasted a few years because it was, not many people were coming. And I brought the whole big band to play the opening of Roland Kirk in that place. And I'd never heard him play live. Man, I was like, oh, yeah, this is great. Oh, my God. He's playing all the saxophones,
Yes.
and the kids were going, because I said, well, this is going to be a happening for you now. I said, you probably never see this again. So I said, pay attention, watch and listen, because this guy is unbelievable. And I was the one that going, oh, my God, how do you do that? And he had all the saxophones set up ways to play two notes, with one finger on each saxophone. It must have been just some Rube Goldberg, thing. I mean, but it was fun to listen to. He had that Manzello, that's that thing with the
and the stritch.
Stritch, yeah.
But I saw him one time in Rochester, and I think people were so stunned.
Yeah.
At the end of a piece, you get this little bit of clapping, and he goes, he says, thanks for that little pitter patter.
Well, where I used to see it, I can't remember the name of that place. Was it the Glass Onion?
Yes.
Rochester? I saw Bill Evans every year. He came every year for 2 days. I never missed any of the shows. I would sit there and pay them again to see the second show. And most of the time he played different music anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, it was remarkable. Rochester was, I go to the Pithod.
The Pithod, I'm from Rochester.
Oh, you are?
Yes. And now
Vinny Ruggiero and all those guys.
Yes. Both and Vinny.
Vinny, oh man.
Now both my daughters live in the Rochester area.
Oh, I love Rochester. I haven't been back since I taught at Eastman.
Yeah.
In the summers, And did you go to the Rangers Holiday at all?
Yes.
That was one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
Because we sight read music and then we recorded it immediately.
Right.
So it was always a challenge. In the trumpet section, my favorite trumpet section was I played Joe Mazzello, Jeff Tyzik, and Al Vizzuti.
Couldn't get anybody good, eh?
That was the summer section. And it was great because I was sort of the lead trumpet at the time. And I'd say, Al, you got to play this one. This one is, we're only going to do it twice. I said, we want to get a good recording for this guy. I said, I might mess this funny technique place up, Oh, okay. And he'd just kill it. I mean, you could turn the music upside down and he could read it. Alan Vizzuti could play, because he played the way I'm talking about. Yeah. Only his mind was like 10 times faster than mine could ever be. And, and Jeff Tyzik could play like the stuff that was more contemporary sounding, like the latest kind of fusion stuff. And Joe was the player like me. So we would switch off, and then we'd all switch off.
Yeah.
When we played shows, none of us played strictly lead, even though at the time, the lead trumpet in Rochester Musicians Union, I refused to play first trumpet after a while because you got paid the same amount, and they had people that were working in the theater every week when it was easy.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd only call me or Al or Jeff or somebody, you know what I mean? When it was too hard.
No.
So I said, so then they started calling me, and I say, okay, I'll play fourth trumpet. He said, no, we want you to play first. I said, why should I play first? It's easier to play fourth. Just have the people that you normally get play first.
Why do you think we called you?
And then, then I talked to Al and Jeff and Joe, and I said, tell them the same thing I said. So what would happen the first few times, they wouldn't hire us. And the contractor would come and say, if I come back here, I'm going to tell everybody that there's no trumpets here. I have to bring a trumpet, and somebody's not going to work. So just think about that. So then they didn't want to pay. See, they didn't want to pay. So Chuck Mangione, actually, I made a proposal to the Musicians Union. I said, if a saxophone player plays and he plays clarinet and saxophone, he gets extra money. I said, that's good. I think that's right. Play three, sometimes you get double scale for that. So the second tenor player is making double scale, and the lead trumpet player, which is a special skill, is making scale. And so is the fourth trumpet player. I said, I don't get that. I said, I'd rather play fourth. This was the Musicians Union meeting. And what do you propose? I said, I propose that the lead trumpet get 50% over scale, or something equivalent, something like that. We get paid for flugelhorn, but they tell us not to use it. See what I mean? Because it would make the contract bigger.
Yes.
So, and then Chuck Mangione was there. He came and he supported that. And I don't know what it is now, but I'm sure it's been rescinded. But the lead trumpet got 50% over scale. So when we played together, we took that 50% and split it up.
Oh.
See? And then we could get through any show.
All right. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, you too. You too. Yeah, this is great. And the thing you're doing is it's really great. There's a Skidmore poster back there, isn't there? Is that a Skidmore poster back there?
No, that's
We used to have one like that.
That's concerts that we do here at Hamilton. And I got Joe Williams on this side and Count Basie on the other side.
He asked me to play lead trumpet once, Count Basie.
Yeah.
In person, because my jazz band was the warm-up act for Count Basie at UK. So my students, I didn't play with the band very often because that would be solo that they couldn't play. I mean, they wouldn't be on stage learning. So, but after my first year there, one of the students says, well, you should play a solo with us. They'd heard me play, I'd demonstrate, I said, no, that phrase, let me play it. It'll take a lot less time to do this.
Yeah.
I play it, and they knew I could play. And after, like they heard me play with Clark Terry because he asked me to play that very first year that I played with him, that I was teaching. But the next year I wasn't playing anything. They said, well, how come you never play with us? I said, well, because you wouldn't have a chance to play another solo. I like to feature one of you playing a solo, a saxophone, a trumpet, a trombone, And if we do that, then there will be 2 trumpet solos. And we don't need that. We need, and I'll feature different people as they're able, So they said, yeah, but you go all over the country and you play with other people's bands. And And I was like, oh my God, that is so true. I never thought of it. You know what I mean? It was so simple. All I was worried about was what they were doing. I was, and it was great. So I said, okay, once a year from now on, I will play with you. And that was a good thing because it showcased the jazz band, and it was a good recruiting thing for anybody that was at Count Basie concert that
All right.
might want to come to UK because the band was pretty good. And I played solo with them. And Count Basie asked to see me. And I said, wow, I'd love to meet him. So he says, wow, young man, you sound really good. He says, if we have an opening on the Basie band, would you like to come and play lead trumpet with us? I said, wow, I'd really love to do that, but I can't do it during the year because I really love what I'm doing here. But thanks for asking. I said, that's a great thing. You know what I mean? So, I'm happy just to get asked, is like having done it almost in a way. So
All
anyway,
right, Vince.
I know you got to go. Next time I have a
Very
different
much.
picture for you. I have a better
I'll
picture.
just pause here and we'll say our goodbyes.
Yeah, thank you so much.